Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of my biggest fitness pet peeves, and that is this whole idea that we need to moderate or be overly concerned with animal source products like whole foods. Okay, whole foods, I'm talking about milk, eggs, meat, things like that are not particularly processed, right? Because when we look at a lot of the data that's out there, uh, they always try to lump in processed meats with red meat instead of looking at them separately. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, when you start processing meats and adding large amounts of preservatives and things, it's not the same thing as just normal fresh meat that you're getting in cooking. Okay, I get that. All right, when you're deep frying meat, right? When you're frying meat in hydrogenated vegetable oils with batter and stuff on it, okay, well, it's not the same thing as just eating meat. But this is really a problem because you see a lot of people who obsess over these things while completely ignoring the obvious, all the refined foods. And I mean, this includes even vegans. There are tons of people out there who promote that veganism is so healthy, right? That it's so healthy and oh, that meat is bad and dairy is bad. But then you look at what some of them eat, they eat junk food. And for them, just because it's vegan, junk food is perfectly acceptable. Or even people who are against fat, who will eat any processed, refined, heavily refined garbage just because it's low fat. Because you see these two camps, right? We see these two camps of people that, oh, it's the animal products that's the problem. And it's like, really? You don't think it's all the refined sugar and refined vegetable oil that contributes to our health problems and obesity and heart disease? You don't think those are factors? You don't think those are bigger factors than animal products? Because when you really start looking more closely at the data, there's no correlation between whole fat dairy, heart disease, cancer, all these things. It's not really there, is it? Okay. Dairy has been heavily looked at regarding cancer. Entire massive meta-analysis done. Only one form of cancer was ever correlated with dairy intake. And I want to make that clear. Correlated, it's not causation. And it was specifically whole milk and prostate cancer. But when I say correlated, it doesn't mean that men who drink tons of whole milk, the highest intake drinkers of whole milk, like get prostate cancer at like 1 in 10. Okay? Men who drink the most whole milk, their demographic, like 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 of them got prostate cancer. Okay, the whole milk, we don't have causation there. And we start looking at these different factors, these things aren't really particularly the issue. And I'm not saying in certain cases excessive saturated fat can't be linked to certain things, okay, in certain environments. Especially in sedentary populations, sure, we know excessive intake of saturated fat in sedentary populations leads to elevated LDL cholesterol. We know that, okay, fair enough. And prolonged elevated LDL cholesterol can contribute to atherosclerosis. We're dealing usually with sedentary populations. But then you look at a lot of this refined garbage, and if we are objective with the data, what blood marker is more of a concern for heart disease than LDL? It would be triglycerides. Well, what causes triglycerides to elevate the most? Usually refined sugars. And there's usually where your triglycerides skyrocket. Well, triglycerides are objectively considered to be a worse issue for heart health than elevated LDL. But that's the thing, you'll see people who do this. You'll see the vegans who sit around eating fried chips and stuff. Okay? All these junk food vegan snacks, these replacement meats that are just piles of garbage. And they'll eat that because, oh, it's not meat. When you really look closely at the data, whole foods, animal source foods, are not particularly linked to health issues. All right, our correlations there are relatively mild in the grand scheme of things, particularly for active individuals. Right? Just go look at the data yourself, dig through all the studies. And I'm fine, I'm not saying there can't be some links. But the thing is, when we look at what they're comparing, okay, when we look at what they're comparing, the animal products are not really the issue. It's what they're mixed with. When we start refining them, it's what they're mixed with. Okay, in other words, there's a difference between bacon and a steak. There's a difference between butter and whole milk. Okay, there's a difference between deep fried chicken versus an egg or, a chicken thigh that's been baked in the oven. A total difference. And yet these clowns will eat this other garbage. They'll eat a big pile of refined carbs that's been deep fried or covered in refined sugar and act like this is somehow not worse than eating the animal products. And it's the same thing when you see the people who harp on animal fat. Let's say they're not even remotely vegan. They eat plenty of animal proteins, animal fat. This is the problem. The same people will sit around eating refined sugars. And again, I'm not saying even in moderation refined sugars are necessarily an issue. I don't eat them, at least not on a regular basis, on a vacation or something. In a social setting, I don't keep anything like that inside my home. I keep it in my home. And all things considered, I'm in pretty damn good health for a 40-something-year-old man. Deadlift over 600 pounds. Blood markers are perfect. Right? Perfect blood work. Perfect blood pressure. I don't have a lot of these issues. Now, guys could argue, oh, you're not ripped, so therefore you can't be fit. Well, I know plenty of ripped guys who have horrific blood work, who have large amounts of visceral fat on their DEXA scans. I don't have that issue. I think people make a big mistake there too, that being ripped is a marker of health. And not necessarily. You can be 15, 16% body fat and be the pinnacle of health. In the real world, when you step away from the goofy, crazy, insane bodybuilding world, which I don't see how anyone takes the physique world seriously as a health endeavor. The most unhealthy human beings walking the earth relative to the amount they exercise. Being ripped will hurt you. It's just as bad as being fat. It will kill you just as fast as being fat. So people need to drop that silly shit. I mean, you're an idiot. Like, if you honestly think that being 7% body fat is healthier than being fat, you're an idiot. You are too stupid to be entitled to an opinion. You're literally a moron if you believe that. Like, you shouldn't be taken seriously. You're delusional. Okay? Let's come back over to the point. How many of these guys, animal fat is the problem? Oh, we got to avoid that. But then they'll eat piles of table sugar. They'll eat tons of refined sugar, refined carbs. It's like, what? I mean, let's be realistic. When we start looking at the data, and I've seen Alan Aragon share stuff on this, let's talk about even obesity and body fat. What one food source has had the largest calorie increase as the obesity epidemic has increased? Anybody know? I've seen Aragon share this stuff 5-6 years ago. And he does have a master's degree in nutrition. He is involved in research. Vegetable oil. Right? If you want to find a calorie source that has been heavily correlated, we don't have causation, but correlated with what percentage of our calories, or we've seen the largest caloric increase of as a society in America that has scaled reasonably well with our increase in obesity, has actually been vegetable oil. Well, that's not an animal product. That's not animal fat. In fact, in periods of time where obesity was much, 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 much lower, we actually consumed a larger amount of our calories from animal fat. What we have seen a large increase in has been vegetable oils and table sugar, refined sugars. I mean, so if we want to talk about health and obesity crisis, those are your culprits. People aren't fat because they eat too much steak or too much chicken or too many eggs We're not fat and sick because of that. We're fat and sick because we eat too much deep fried dog crap and we eat too much processed sugar. This is why we have the massive caloric surplus that we do in America. This is why heart disease is the leading cause of death. And people, if they want perspective, if you were to look at the heart health deaths, like cardiovascular disease, how many people does that kill in America? If you were to add up every one of the mass shootings that we've had in the last decade, which everyone freaks out about, right? Okay. Add every person up who has died in the last 10 years in one of those, combine them all together, and that's how many people die every hour. Okay. Every hour of every day from cardiovascular related disease. Every hour. We didn't have this problem when people were eating more meat, just animal products. That's not your cause, guys. Not saying it can't contribute, because all calories that matter, but this is not why people are fat, overeating, and sick and dying. It really isn't. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.